Hello and welcome to session 2 of Meshology's LineRender 9000 rendering lines, and we're here tonight with Jonathan, who is the creator of LineRender 9000, and we're going to be exploring how to render the lines of a character. As you mentioned in session 1, part of the problems with rendering a character or rendering lines, I should say, for rendering lines for a character in LineRender 9000 or any line render program for that matter, is that the transparency maps on the hair tend to kind of falsify how the hair is made. And I'm going to let Jonathan explain to you all the details and just watch along and do what he says to do. Hi, Jonathan.
Hey Sean, thanks for having me back. Well, let's dive right into it. Let's load up the LineRender 9000 settings and start getting some basic line outputs and see what problem areas we have and how we can solve them.
All right, well right now we don't have any cameras loaded, so let's, I'll just double click on the cameras to load it up.
All right.
And it brings in the LineRender 9000 cameras. I'd like to also suggest we also add in the edge blend camera. We did that in the end of the last episode. I'd like to do it at the beginning of this episode so that we have all of the cameras in there.
Okay.
So there we go.
All right. So, did we already pick our image size for this one?
We haven't. I've gone with a relatively small image size. I think it is, let's see, 1000 by 800. I can go larger if you like.
Okay. Are we planning on doing a full body picture or a portrait?
Okay. What would you select?
It really only matters for the line thickness that we end up picking, right? Because if you're closer up, then you're going to end up with thicker lines, generally around a smaller part of the character. So that would be the only big difference, and why we would choose that right now versus trying to figure that out later. So if we're going to do a full body, which I think is totally fine, let's constrain our viewport so that we're not rendering all that extra space. So we'll go a little bit more vertical with the ratio.
All right, so we'll go, let's see, maybe 3x4 maybe? Let's try that. All right, 2x4? How's that?
Yeah, I think that's starting to look pretty good. All right. Well, let's load up the LineRender LR9K auto render script and hammer in a few default settings and see what we end up with.
All right. So here we are. We don't have the edge blend camera added yet, so let's add that. Add. And we want to add the edge blend labels. 3 LineRender 9000. So I think those are all the cameras that we have in there now. The Tune two-tone cam, the main camera, Fresnel, Shadow, and Edge Blend.
Okay, let's disable the shadow opacity cam for now. We'll come back to that.
All right.
And I don't know if we really need both Edge Blend and Fresnel, because they kind of overlap and they're sort of doing the same thing. So if we want to use Edge Blend for this one, then let's use that, and maybe we get rid of Fresnel for the time being at least.
All right.
And then we also need to remember to disable our composite passes.
Yes.
So we can do that down at the bottom. And then file type extension, we're going to go with PNG again, and set our file prefix, and then we'll give it a click and we'll see what we get.
K-I-L-I-N. So we're going to hit render now.
One thing that's probably worth noting here is that our renders are a little bit longer, and that's because Genesis 7 is going to be higher resolution geometry, and especially with certain things, they load with default textures that are a little bit more complicated, and also hair can tend to be very calculation intensive when it comes to rendering. So those are some reasons why our main render is taking a little bit longer than the other renders that we did, like the line versions where they're disabling the textures. All right. Let's get ourselves a background.
Oh, good point. Alrighty.
So for now, let's ignore the main color render and let's focus on the outlines or the line outputs and see what we ended up with here.
This is a line output of the main camera.
Okay. So what we can glean from this one right away is that most of it is the same color ID, or at least a very, very similar color ID. And there's a couple of exceptions. Looks like the eyelashes, if we look where you can sort of see the top parts of her eyes, it looks like the eyelashes are a different color ID. And it also looks like the middle part of her dress is a different color ID. But otherwise, we're not getting a distinction between the different areas. So here we would need to make some decisions about what do we want to have for different color ID values in order to get nice clear outlines around the different parts of the character in this case. So okay, so we'll take a note of that, and let's take a look at the edge blend and the edge blend lines.
This is the edge blend.
Okay.
And this is the edge blend lines.
All right. So the edge blend lines are kind of interesting. There's, I guess, a couple of things we can say about them. In some cases, it should be drawing, it looks like it should be drawing thicker lines, or at least more defined lines than it is. They're kind of light, I guess.
Kind of invisible, yeah. Kind of fading out at points.
Yeah, right. So it looks like we're picking up some detail around the face, which is probably okay looking. Like if we composite this with the color ID render, I think we'll have a reasonable looking set of detail lines in here, but I think that we can certainly clean up the line output on that with just some setting tweaking. So
I noticed that we've picked up details of the hand on the hip, which we didn't have in the previous one. And I also noticed that we've picked up a leg detail. The leg closest to us, we now have an outline of it. So if I just switch back quickly to the other one, to the main camera lines, you can see we have the edges of the figure, like a silhouette of the figure, if you will, but no detail where it's inside the character.
right. So let's overlay the color ID lines along with the edge blend lines, and that's sort of what our main outline line art for the character is looking right now. So I think the most notable improvement we'll be able to do is assign color IDs, which will give us nice outlines around the dress and nice outlines around the hair. And then from there, we can start playing with the settings on the edge blend to try and get an appropriate level of detail for the outliner.
All right.
So let's go back to DAZ and make some settings changes and see if we can get this a little bit closer.
All right. So you'd like me to go to, what should we start with? Let's say the dress, maybe?
Yeah, let's start by setting our color IDs.
Okay.
So on the dress itself, we have, looks like 3 different colors. So we could probably do the skirt and the top the same color, and then the belt a different color if we want to have that nice outline for where the belt is.
Right.
I think that that's a nice segregation we can do.
Yep.
So let's go ahead and do that.
All right. So let's type in LR9K here.
Yep, there we go.
It pulls just the color ID out of all of the rest of the multitudes of settings that are in the surface menus.
Yep.
And we're going to take the skirt and the top, which are currently white, and we're going to set them to, I don't know, let's say dark red. Okay.
Sure.
And then we'll take the belt and we'll make that green, emerald green. All right. So
Okay.
So that should be the skirt handled. Then we can take a look at the female itself, the body figure itself.
Okie dokie. We've got the hair selected
Oh,
again.
I'm sorry.
Or now we have the hair selected.
Victoria 7, there we go. Back. Oh, this is still the hair.
Okay. Yeah, if you scroll down at the bottom there in the
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
surfaces, you can select Victoria 7, yeah. So I think it's okay for now for us to set all of Victoria to the same color, because we only really want to get her figure outline right now. We may end up changing that as we go, but for now I think it's okay to say all of Victoria can be the same color.
All right. All right.
Okay, and now we can do the same thing with the hair, making all of the hair the same color.
All right.
Okay. All right, let's kick off the auto render script again. And we don't really need the main render this time because we're not changing that really. So we can disable the tune two-tone cam. Sorry, I said
that's
the wrong
okay.
thing.
Gotcha.
So let's disable the tune two-tone cam. And for the main camera, let's take a look at the settings for that. Here we can lower the line edge threshold. Remember how in the last tutorial we were talking about how since we're so distinct on our colors, the outliner's not going to get confused by neighboring colors so much. If they're any different, we want the nice clear lines. So we can lower that down to probably 0.2 without worrying too much. We can also disable the render lights and render shadows checkboxes for this one.
Okay. Render lights, render shadows.
Yep. And another thing that probably is worth mentioning in this tutorial is the pixel samples X and pixel samples Y settings. Let's bump those both up to 8. The pixel samples is sort of the resolution of the output image. It's how precise the pixels are getting defined when the rendering engine is drawing them. So this is one of your quality versus time slider bars, if you want to imagine it that way, where higher values is going to give you more anti-aliased lines, which is good, at the expense of a longer render time. So 8 is an okay setting, but you can always bump that up more if you need to have nicer looking lines without as much jagged edges. That's one of the things you can do.
So I'm just curious if you wouldn't mind clarifying for me. So pixel samples X, pixel samples Y. Does that mean that it's looking at the pixels on either side of the edge that it's trying to define and sampling it 8 times? Is that what it's doing?
I think it's the radius of the pixels when defining the color of the resulting output pixel color.
Okay.
So when it's trying to figure that out, it's going to blend it more with higher settings.
Okay. And anything you want to change in the edge blend?
Yes. Let's change the pixel samples up to 8 on this render as well. And I think we want it to be a little bit more liberal with its line drawing. So let's lower the line edge threshold down to 0.35. It might be too much, but if it's too much, then we'll back it back up a little bit. And then here we can Disable lights, shadows, and we can enable use color ID materials.
All right.
All right, let's give this one a go.
Alrighty, so I'm going to get rid of these. These are the. Do you want me to keep any of the renders that we have in here right now?
Only keep the tune two-tone cam.
Okay,
So
just
the
for
main render. Let's replace all the other images.
Okay, so here's an interesting example. This is one of these examples where this is scale property because we didn't use the two-tone cam to render out, so everything scaled properly to itself, right? You can see that, but not to the original two-tone cam.
All right, well, let's ignore that because we're just looking at our outlines and refining that anyway.
All right.
So
Okay. So here's our renders. Starting with the main camera color IDs, the red, the pink, and the purple, and the green that we used.
okay.
Here are the lines that it generated.
All right. So I'm seeing some issues around the hair right now. And I'm curious as to why we're getting issues there. Can you pull up the main camera render? The colors for the color map. Okay, so there should be enough distinction there between that purple and the background. So if we zoom in a little bit closer around the hair where it's meeting the white background, let's take a look at that because I believe 3D Light's going to be treating the background as black. We have a white background here in Photoshop, but when 3D Light is contrasting the color of an object to a transparent background, it's contrasting it with black. So we could reduce our edge threshold a little bit further here in this color render and see if we start getting some lines. But part of our problem, and this is especially apparent on the left side of the character, where the hair is sort of slowly fading into the white background. We see that? So it starts like at this dark purple, and then we start getting these, and then it starts getting like light there. So what's happening here is that the color ID render is partially transparent. So instead of it getting, instead of all those pixels there being a pure purple, they start fading into this lighter purple as they progress to being thinner and thinner wisps of hair, right?
Right.
So that's the transparency issue that I was referring to in the last tutorial that can be a little bit problematic. Nevertheless, we can probably adjust that a little bit, make it a little bit better right now by lowering our edge threshold to be even more sensitive, and then we'll start probably getting an outline there around the hair. Although, let's flip back to the main camera lines again, and we can see what the outliner is doing right now.
So this is the main camera lens with obviously the color ID pass enabled.
Right. Yeah, so we can see that we have a similar issue on the hairlines, the forehead, where we've kind of lost our nice outline right there.
Yeah.
And then, so our next pass, we want to lower the edge threshold even more and see how our lines are going to go. But that's okay. Let's take a look at the edge blend render and the edge blend lines and see if we're a little bit closer on those.
So there's the edge blend. That's the edge blend pass. And this is the edge blend lines that were generated from that. So should we superimpose the two line passes?
Yeah, let's do that and see what we end up with here.
So there's the two together.
So I think that we need to do a little bit more adjustments with the edge blend lines pass. We're starting to get kind of better definition around the eyes and the nose and the lips. The hair obviously needs some work, although we are getting some interesting detail up in the top part of the hair. We're
Up
getting
here?
little detail lines there, which are pretty. Yep, those are pretty nice looking, I think.
Yep.
We're also getting an okay line over by where her arm sort of creases. We
Here?
can see that we're getting like a detailed line. Yep. And then we're also getting pretty good detail lines around the fingers, at least the part that I can see.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Can we zoom out a little bit on the overall image? Overall it looks okay. There's one thing that's a little bit of a glaring thing with these two images, and that's that our line thicknesses I think are different. So the color IDs you could see look pretty distinctly black, and the edge blend are kind of a lighter gray, like they're not as harsh. Part of that also is because if we look at the edge blend render, the edge blend render is kind of light gray, so the differences in the color aren't that drastic really between it, which tends to be why I feel like I get better results from the Fresnel reflected V render, because that tends to be a little bit darker with a more drastic white.
okay.
But either way. So, all right. So let's go back to Daz Studio, because I think we know a couple of things we can play with. Get yet another pass of refinement on these two lines until we start getting a little bit closer to what we really want. So on the color ID render, let's lower the threshold even more than it is. So I believe our last setting was 0.2.
Sorry, which color
Let's
ID
go ahead
render?
It's pass number 2, main camera.
Okay. So lower this even
Yep.
more?
And so, yes, lower line edge threshold down to, yeah, I think 1 is fine. 0.1 is fine. And then let's check edge blend. All right, so it looks like our line width is actually the same size. We have 1 pixel sized line in both. So I think our only recourse at this point is to lower our line edge threshold down a little bit more, and I guess we're going to keep kind of easing it lower until we start getting too many lines. I think 0.15 might be too low. What were we at in the last render? 0.3?
0.35.
Okay. Let's try 0.2. We'll know when we've gotten too far. So let's try it, and then we can ease it up if we need to.
Do you want to add the Fresnel camera just to see what the difference is?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Let's enable the Fresnel reflected V camera. Set the pixel samples to 8. Line width 1. Line edge threshold. Let's just make it the same thing as the edge blend camera.
Edge blend was pardon me, but 0.2. Okay. And we'll take off the render lights and shadows.
Yes, and enable use color ID materials. And I don't know if you want to change the file prefix on this pass.
No, I'm going to leave it so that I. So I'm just looking for color
Okay.
pass number. Well, is the Fresnel's not going to pick it up, is it? But oh, okay, you're right. I'll change it. It's 2.
All right. Let's
All right,
give it a
render.
whirl.
Okay, so color ID, as you already mentioned, didn't change. Main camera lines is there.
All right, so now we're actually getting lines around the hair, which is
Yeah.
good. We weren't before, remember?
Yeah.
So can we zoom in real quick around the hair and take a look at what that looks like now? So we're starting to get to about the limit of how good hair can look when we're not playing with the transparency maps, right? Because the color ID render is supposed to simplify the image into distinct colors that are make it easy for the outliner to know where to draw lines. But right now, the transparency maps on the hair fade into the background, and there's nothing that the outliner and our settings and our tweaking can really do about that. It's going to end up getting confused at some point because the hair isn't a distinct color from the background. It fades into the background. So that's sort of the problem with the hair transparency that we're going to face if we keep it the way that it is. But it does look a lot better than it did.
Yeah, it looks
So,
great. Yeah.
victory points for us on that. All right, let's take a look at the Fresnel reflected V lines now and see what those renders look like.
Wow. Wow, that's great. We picked up all the details in the face. We picked up the details in the neck. Picked up a lot of details in the strands of the hair. Lost a little bit of the detail on the left side.
Yep, so overall it looks pretty good. We're starting to get a lot of color kind of in on the face. Like there's more lines in the face, especially around the nose. You see how dark the nose is and how dark the mouth is. It's maybe a little bit too much. I would maybe scale it back a little bit, but I do like some of the details that we are picking up, like the elbow on the left hand side of the picture, and then the details on the dress, the seam of the dress,
Yeah.
and also in
Yeah.
her neck.
Yeah.
All those are really nice details to come out. Now, if we're gonna be okay with modifying things in post, you could certainly delete or clean up some of the lines in the face and keep all these other detail lines. They're looking pretty good. Like the hair texture looks pretty nice. The lines on the neck and the seams on the dress and stuff look pretty nice. We could keep that, but for academic purposes, we're going to continue adjusting until we start getting better lines coming out. But
Let's just zoom up.
interesting results.
Let's just zoom up for 1 sec
Yeah.
to see the rest of the image, just so we know what's going on. Like I like the details on the toes that have come out.
Yeah, we also got really thick shadow looking lines there on the hand on the right there. So what's happening there? Well, that's symptomatic of line thickness and line threshold being a little bit too extreme. I think our line thickness is fine, so our threshold's just a little bit too low. So we're gonna ease it up till we start getting some nicer lines there.
All right.
Let's take a look at the edge blend renders now and see if those are looking a little bit different.
Wow.
Maybe better.
Yeah.
All right. So the edge blend is actually looking better. As I said before, the Fresnel reflected V lines render, or not the line render, but the Fresnel reflected V render is just a darker render in general. So the difference between the colors is more extreme, right? We're contrasting like a dark gray or a black with a lighter with a white. So those contrasting edges, we need a higher threshold there. But clearly with edge blend, a lower threshold, all the way down to 0.2 is probably fine. I think that the lines around the face are looking pretty good. I think the texture in the hair and the lines around the fingers, everything is looking pretty good to me with the edge blend render right now. We could continue to adjust it if we wanted to. If we didn't like as many lines were on the face, we could increase the threshold a little bit. I think it looks pretty okay. Can we zoom out a little bit? Let's check the other hand and the toes and make sure that we didn't get any artifacts we hate.
So hands, I think the hands look really great compared to the Fresnel. Toes
Yep.
look really good.
Yep.
I like especially in this particular pass, in the Fresnel this back leg has almost disappeared. Let me switch back to it for just one moment. So there's the Fresnel, and you can see that it's so faint, and it's almost disappeared here. Even here.
EdgeBlend has given us nicer results for this for sure. Although some of this goes away with good color ID lines, of course. But I think that we are getting pretty good results with EdgeBlend now. So we don't really need to pursue Fresnel reflected V unless we really, really want to at this point. Okay, so let's take a look at the EdgeBlend lines overlaid with the main camera lines, because that's going to be the majority of our line work for the character, and let's just see what we end up with.
Oh, that's pretty nice.
I think overall it's looking pretty good.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things that I think we could maybe improve. The main thing is the leg. The leg that's in the closest to the camera kind of has a thinner gray outline there.
Mm-hmm.
Where it overlaps with the other leg. And it's especially pronounced down by where the foot is overlapping the other foot, like near the toes. That line's just not existing at all on the right side of her foot, on the image, where the toes are overlapping the other toes.
Yep.
Yeah, right there.
Yep.
So we could solve this by cheating a little bit with the color ID, by making the legs and the feet two different colors. And it sort of cheats because the dress is covering where the colors meet, so we won't get a line where we don't want one. We might start having problems if she was wearing something like a swimsuit or something,
Okay.
but in this case we can certainly get away with having different colors for the two different legs. So I think that will probably fix that. What other things do we need to fix? I guess the next thing is really the hair. We might want to do some things with the face too. Let's zoom in a little bit closer on the facial features, please.
Yeah. Do you mind if I just superimpose the Fresnel camera lines for just one moment? I'm just kind of curious what they look like if we added them to this. Because there was a lot more detail in the Fresnel, and although the hand wasn't my favorite.
Yeah, I think we would probably get really nice outputs with having all of those renders together. We do certainly get a better look on the leg.
Yeah.
I think we need to adjust the Fresnel's line threshold setting to be not as extreme.
Yes. Yeah.
And then we'll start getting some better lines. I mean, we've done a couple passes on this edge blend, so not too shocking that we need to do another render out. So okay, so let's adjust the couple of settings we did with the line art, and then we'll come back and play with the hair more.
Okay.
So back to Daz Studio.
Yep.
Let's make the Fresnel reflected V lines have a slightly higher threshold, maybe about 0.10 more than it is right now.
So I take it up to 0.30?
Yes. And then perhaps we should click Save Settings and go play with the color ID on the leg. And yep, after you click Save Settings, you can hit Cancel and it will remember what we've changed.
All right. And then we want to go in and we're going to adjust the color IDs on the leg, right?
Well, I'm not sure that actually she has different textures for the legs now that I think about it.
I don't know
I think
either,
that
actually.
the legs share the same. I'm pretty sure the leg shares the same texture, so I don't think we can get away with that.
Surfaces, arms, fingernails, legs.
Yeah, legs are all one texture. Yep.
Yep.
So, I mean, we could certainly get away with it by doing a texture edit of the legs in order to make the color ID on the legs split down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
You could do that. But I don't. I really don't think we need to do that for this image. I think that it looks pretty good with the Fresnel and the edge blend overlaid. So let's leave it as is. And so let's render out the Fresnel thing by itself and see how that looks.
Just the Fresnel by itself.
Yeah, because
That's all we changed.
we don't really. Yeah, that's the only thing that we really needed to adjust.
S3.
All right.
All right. I'll turn off the previous render and just show you, here's the Fresnel pass, and here's the line pass from this change.
Okay. Looks like the hand's still getting a lot of darkness around it.
Yeah.
I think we should ease up the threshold a little bit more.
All right. So we'll go back to DAS.
Yep, back to DAS. Let's up it by another 10 or so.
40. And
All right.
4. So here is the Fresnel pass, and here is the line pass.
Okay, I think those lines are looking a lot better to me. Can we zoom in on the hand?
Yep.
We're getting a little bit of darkness around what looks like the fingernails and the knuckles, but overall not too bad. If we wanted to continue playing with it, I think it probably needs to, the edge threshold needs to go up a little bit more, maybe 0.5 this time. You know, I think it's starting to be passable at this point. I think that if we overlay this with the edge blend lines that we got from render 3 and the color ID pass from render 3, I think we're starting to have pretty convincing line work with the exception of the hair.
So we have the new Fresnel line render overlaid with the edge blend, which is this one, which I just turned off, and the camera lines.
Yep, the color ID pass. So I think we've got pretty convincing line work now. The only things that we really need to play with are the hair, and if we wanted to, we could really nuance the face a little bit more. And there's a couple of things that we could do with the face. Notably, we could change the color ID of her irises, so then we have the nice thick lines around her irises if we wanted it.
Yeah.
We could also play with the edge blend and Fresnel reflected V cameras, mainly the threshold, in order to nuance how much detail is coming out in the face. I think it's an appropriate level of detail. I think it's fine for what we're trying to do, but that would be what I would do if I were going to continue to play with this a little bit more. At this point,
The only thing I would do is add the a color ID to the iris. I find that the eye is a bit zombie-ish, for lack of a better word.
It would probably come out well enough if you added color. But yeah, we would be wanting the color ID render on the iris in order to make the line art work by itself. I would agree with that. So maybe we do that. And that's pretty simply done by going to DAZ Studio, selecting Victoria, going to the surfaces, and then finding the iris and the pupil. We need both of those to be the same color. Irises and
There's pupils.
yep,
You want irises though, right?
yep. We want to, yeah, both of them, irises and pupils.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm hitting Control when I select both of them at the same time with other things in between. And we're going to select the color ID of, I don't know, we haven't used blue yet. Let's use blue.
And then we probably want to change the whites of her eyes to be a different color as well if we want to have a nice outline around that. Although it did seem like the Fresnel and edge blend were already giving us a pretty good line there. So I actually think it's fine doing it the way we have it right now. Let's just see how this ends up turning out. I think we're probably fine with just the iris and the pupil being a different color than the rest of Victoria. That will give us an outline around the inner part of her eye so she doesn't look so much like a zombie. Other areas we could consider doing this to are the lips. If we wanted to have a nice outline around the lips entirely, we could also make the lips a different color.
Right now we're only rendering out using the Fresnel V. Would you like to use edge blend or something else?
We only need to replace the render pass number 2, the color ID pass. So we can actually disable Fresnel reflected V and enable the main camera pass number 2.
All right. And we're not going to change.
Right,
we're not changing the edge threshold or anything else. We're just going to go for it.
Yep, just give it a go.
Here's the main camera pass.
Yeah, I think that what's going on is that our eye surface is getting colored. Well, the Victoria's eye is, multi-layered, so so we changed the iris, but I think the eye surface is probably getting the color pink. So
let's fix that then. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the transparency of the cornea to transparent, which means that we need to turn off our LR9K search so that we can see the rest of the
shader properties.
Shader properties, thank you. I'm sure it's called opacity, isn't it? So we're going to take the opacity down to 0.
Do the same thing with eye moisture. That could be another one.
Okay, eye moisture. Take it down to 0. So let's see what happens. And render. I'm going to make it 5. And oh boy, she's got eyes.
Hey, we got it.
So that's the color ID pass. Eliminate the color ID pass, and we end up with lines that look like this. She looks like something from Doctor Who.
which doesn't look so great by itself. However, if we add in the other lines, I'm expecting that we'll have something that looks a little bit more reasonable.
These are the render lines that we came up with, the main camera lines after we added the pupils. We added the Fresnel refracted V lines from render pass number 5, and we like the blend lines from render 3, which is what we end up with.
Yep, looks good.
That looks nice. Yeah. You know what I really like is the hair. I like that the hair looks like it has motion to it.
Yep. All right. So I think this is looking pretty good overall. I think we need to start giving some attention to the hair.
So as with session 1, we're at about the halfway point in this session. We've created some good lines for the body of the figure, and in the next session we're going to focus on creating more graphic novel style hair, as well as using lighting to create moods or shadows. Don't forget to check out our Facebook group or meshology.guru for additional information or questions. Thanks for watching, and see you in part 2. Bye.